Burgess, Republican representing Denton County and parts of Tarrant County as well. Joining the questioning as always, Gromer Jeffers, political writer for the Dallas Morning News.
Welcome back.
Thank you very much.
For both of us. Right?
Welcome back to you too.
Thanks for having me on.
Good morning, Congressman, too. Thanks for being here. Let's start with Obamacare. You heard a lot about that from your constituents here recently at town hall meetings during the August recess. Senator Ted Cruz, a fellow Tea Party colleague there, has threatened to shut down the government over Obamacare. Karl Rove, Mitt Romney, Dick Morris say don't do that. Let it collapse under its own weight. If it's really flawed, why not sit back and see what happens?
Well, there are validity to both arguments. One of the only tools in our toolbox right now, and people are so concerned about this. Let me just tell you, I've been around in the district. Heard from a lot of folks. I did 4 healthcare roundtables with providers and chamber groups. Very, very concerned about this. As far as the funding goes, I mean, it really may be the only tool in the toolbox for conservatives in the House of Representatives. That may be the only means with which we have to restrict this very bad thing going forward. But it's not a question of shutting the government down. It's a function of funding every other portion, every other function of the government, except the implementation of this very flawed and very bad idea that we know is the Affordable Care Act. Look, I did an event up in Highland Village just the other day. We had someone who used to work in the Department of Labor for the Obama administration, and he sort of it was not a political discussion, it was simply a technical discussion. These are all the regulations that every small and large business is going to have to follow, starting really October 1st and then carrying on into future years. You could just see the deflation on people's faces when they began to realize what is going to be required for them for reporting, for costs. No one has any idea what's going to happen to rates in the state of Texas. You'll find out right before the enrollment period starts. In
just a couple of weeks. But elder Republicans like Karl Rove, Mitt Romney, Dick Morris say, hey, don't even waste your time on defunding this. If this thing is really flawed like the GOP believes, let it just go its way and collapse on its own. Why isn't that a good idea, though?
Well, look at this. We're coming up on a big pivot point, which is September 30th, October 1st. The exchanges are supposed to be open for open enrollment. Funding for the federal government runs out September 30th and has to be re-upped. I got to tell you, I believe from what I'm hearing that by the time we get to that point in the calendar, people are going to be so discouraged by this health care law. The employment figures are enormously depressing, with only part-time jobs being created. You've got Jimmy Hoffa of the labor unions, for crying out loud, saying, you know, the Democrats have destroyed the 40-hour work week, which was the backbone of the middle class. I think the people are going to demand, as one, this thing be stopped, and it be stopped at the end of the fiscal year, and then sort of the ice. The president coming out and say, well, I'll let members of Congress exempt themselves from the law. Bad idea, Mr. President. I don't want to be exempted from this thing because there's no way I can go to the people that I represent and say I deserve something different than you.
So bottom line, is Senator Cruz right or wrong about the government shutdown issue?
He is correct to push the issue of funding of further implementation of the Affordable Care Act. Fund everything else that you're supposed to, Social Security, Department of Education, Department of Labor, but you don't have to fund this.
At what point do Republicans in Congress just say, hey, you know, we're not going to get this repealed. We're not going to, you know, have a legislative solution to the way we want to repeal this and just let it go. Again, at what point do you just give up and say, hey, this is the law of the land?
I think the people are going to demand it. But you want to talk about the law of the land for a moment? Every time the president gets up, every time the leader in the Senate gets up, they talk about undoing the sequester. The sequester is the law of the land. The deficit this year, this end of this fiscal year, is going to be an embarrassing $606 billion, but that's 1/2 of what it was 2 years ago. So spending reduction has been affected by the law of the land. I wish the president would get off trying to undo that.
Dr. Burgess, do you really think you can stop the Affordable Care Law? Do you really think you can change it? Or is this just
Can I, as an individual member of Congress? No, I cannot. But I think the people have the power within their hands to make their voices heard to their representatives and their senators. I got to thank Senator Cruz for going over the heads of his leadership, perhaps in the Senate, and saying, let me hear from you. This is an important issue. It is the correct pivot time to be having this argument. End of September, 1st of October. Open enrollment in the exchanges October 1st. Are they going to be ready? Secretary Sebelius in San Antonio in Texas said, yes, they will. I can't believe it's going to happen. And we are allowed no information on any of the testing of the federal computer hub that is supposed to run this thing. We're just supposed to take it on it's going to work. They'll tell us the day before it starts.
Congressman, you're out on August recess, as all of your colleagues are too. A lot of criticism for the 113th Congress. In the first 8 months, only passing 22 laws. What kind of message does that send to constituents, do you think?
Well, look, we've got a divided government, and in many ways in 2010, when the Republicans were handed back the reins of the House, everyone recognized that the White House hadn't changed, the majority makeup in the Senate hadn't changed. In many ways, we were elected as a restraining order on the excesses of the executive branch that had been so much in evidence in the first 2 years of President Obama's administration. Hasn't really changed today. Yes, I try to work with people on the other side where I can. We passed a big Medicare bill out of committee that was 51-0. Henry Waxman was my co-sponsor. Imagine that. There's an effort at bipartisanship. That sort of stuff doesn't get reported. What you guys want to talk about is when it doesn't work, and I'm here to help you.
Well, last question for you. Ted Cruz and Rick Perry both flirting with a possible run for the GOP nomination in 2016. If they both run, who are you going to support?
It's a long ways away. I like Dr. Ben Carson, too, ever since I heard him at the prayer breakfast up in Washington, D.C. last April. The guy believes in a flat tax. He believes in health savings accounts. I'm there with you, Dr. Carson. Let's go.
Well, in a few moments we have left, will the House pass an immigration bill?
That's a tough one. I don't think it is in the immediate future, and I know people on my side have talked about something happening in October. I don't see it. People are going home to their districts this week. They're hearing from everyone who comes to their public meetings and their chamber meetings and their Rotary Club meetings. So members of Congress are going to hear from their constituents. What I'm hearing from mine is everything they've seen come out of the Senate on the so-called Senate bill, no dice, no sale. Things would have to change dramatically, and I'm not sure how you would improve that. Everyone here believes we've got to secure borders, we've got to provide interior enforcement, we've got to imply employer verification, and until those pieces are in place and working, talking about anything else is really just superfluous.
Gotcha. Congressman, we're going to wait and see what happens at the end of September when you guys return and see what happens with Obamacare.